up, my people? Today, we are talking about how to be less defensive. Do you ever find yourself getting defensive and you're like, no, I'm not, but I kind of am? Do you ever get called out for being defensive? Listen, it happens to everybody. The problem is nobody teaches us how to deal and become less defensive, because someone who's defensive is someone we don't trust. Someone who's defensive is someone we don't give the big promotions to, right? If we want to excel in our careers, we have to learn a more constructive way of dealing with criticism, feedback, pushback. And that's what we're going to learn today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 ways to become less defensive. And in the last way, I'm actually going to give you a system for responding that will absolutely transform the way you show up to these things. So stay till the end. Let's dive in. All right, so you want to be less defensive. There are 3 things I want you to work on. Thing number 1, first and foremost, I want you to really decide how you want to show up to moments of criticism or pushback that cause you to be defensive, right? Do you want to show up as someone who's fragile, volatile, unstable, untrustworthy with tough feedback? Is that who you want to be? I don't think it is. I do not think that that is who you want to be. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have Googled how to be less defensive. So who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Do you want to show up as someone who is grounded, authentic, open, curious, strong? Do you want to have executive presence, right? The first thing to do if you want to be less defensive is really determine and commit to an identity that appeals to you. Personally, for me, defensiveness is a form of victim playing. And as for me and my house, we will not be acting like victims. So for me, the reason I work hard to overcome my own tendency to be defensive is that I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to be this like poor me victim who, instead of like, oh, poor me, I'm a victim, I'm going to lash out at you because you're attacking me. That's not who I am trying to be in this world. I want to be someone who can grow, who can demonstrate that I can be trusted with difficult conversations and difficult situations. So right now, I want you to make that determination for yourself. Who do you want to be in moments like that? Write it down, 3 words. Figure it out, commit to it. Which leads us to thing number 2. Number 2, get really good at pattern recognition. Pattern recognition means you're able to see patterns that are happening around you, right? People can use it to describe all kinds of things. I want you to start to notice what triggers your defensiveness. For me, I get triggered and I get defensive when I am caught off guard. When something comes out of left field that I was not anticipating, that I was completely oblivious to, completely unaware of. That's when I get defensive. Because if it's something that I kind of know I screwed up and somebody gives me feedback, like I'm already thinking about it. I'm already trying to figure out how to apologize or make the situation right. But when it is something out of left field that catches me off guard, that I don't fully understand, that is when I get defensive. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I was trying so hard. What do you mean it wasn't right? What do you mean I hurt your feelings, or whatever the case may be? So for me, now that I know that's my pattern, I can have a plan, right? And my plan for when somebody comes to me with something is that I get very, very curious. I try and calm myself down, right? I try and get to a place where I can just perceive, take in information, and I can always come back later and deal with it. But in the moment, if somebody calls me out for something, my job is not to react, it is to listen, right? The power of pattern recognition is that it allows you to make a plan. So I really want you to think right now. I want you to just pause for a second and think of the last few times you got defensive. The last few times you got defensive. Who was it that triggered you? What was the situation? What were you being called out for? Is it the situation that's triggering, or is it the specific behavior you're being called out for that's triggering, right? Also notice, listen, this is a channel about gaslighting at work, right? If somebody is gaslighting you and attacking you for something that's not fair, you still don't have to act with defensiveness. Even if you're being unjustly attacked, defensiveness never freaking works, because defensiveness creates an arms race, right? Somebody attacks, somebody counterattacks, counterattack. I mean, it's a whole thing, right? Whether or not the other person is right or wrong, defensiveness is literally never the right response. You just don't get anywhere. You might feel invigorated. It's very invigorating. It's very energy producing in a negative sense to get defensive to something. You can be like, oh, can you, what, me? And then you call your friend and be like, can you even believe he just said that or she just said that? And now you're spinning a whole defensiveness vortex of energy. And it is totally not helpful. You're wasting your time. You're wasting everybody else's time. Everybody else whose ears are getting bent, right? Defensiveness is pointless. So anyway, just to recap, first and foremost, decide who you want to be in those moments. Do you want to be defensive and fragile, or do you want to be strong and grounded, curious, whatever the case may be? 2, start to notice your patterns. What tends to trigger your defensiveness? What is it? Who is it? Are there patterns? Write them down. And now we come to the final piece, which is the system for responding, not reacting. Are you ready for your system? The system is dead simple. When I was a kid growing up in fire country, Southern California, every child knew what to do if they caught fire. I mean, how hilarious is that? It's like hashtag so California. But if you get caught up in a fire and you're on fire, literally, stop, drop, roll. Stop, drop, and roll. We all knew that as kids, right? We knew about earthquake drills, right? Minute the earth starts moving, you slide into a doorway or you slide under a big strong desk, right? We knew these things without even thinking about them. Why? Because if you're on fire or if the earth is shaking, you don't have time to come up with some elaborate script. You need to know what to do. Okay? So what I'm about to tell you, and you know what's so ironic, you guys? Literally 10 minutes before I started recording, when I was still putting on my makeup, total earthquake. Yep. Ground started shaking. And what'd your girl do? She went right to the doorway, stood in the doorway, got the dog. I knew what to do. So here's what you do when an earthquake happens to you. And by earthquake, I mean somebody gives you harsh feedback and you feel defensive. Ready? Here it is. Listen, process, respond. Listen, process, respond. Say it with me. Listen, process, respond. Okay, what do I mean by that? If someone comes at you and calls you out, your only job in that moment is to listen. How do you listen? You don't just go like this. You don't just go like this. You ask questions. You find out more. Get as much data as you can so that you can really understand where this person's coming from. Don't worry. You're not going to die because you're listening to difficult feedback. Say more about that. Tell me more. Tell me more. Listen, process, respond. Listen, we just did. Let's talk about process. Once you've gotten all the data and the person has told you the whole thing and really gotten it off their chest, then you're going to say, thank you for this. Give me some time to process this because I want to respond appropriately. You take 24 hours, you take 20 minutes, whatever the hell you got, and you process it. You parse it out. What of this feedback is fair? What of it is not fair? What is mine to own? What is theirs to own? Right? There are people that give feedback that is totally not helpful. How do you know the feedback isn't helpful? It's vague. There's no way you can take action on it, and it makes you feel like shit. That's how you know it's not helpful feedback. But somewhere in there may be something that is yours to own. Find it. Find it. Because then once you've parsed out what's fair, not fair, what's yours, not yours, then you can respond. And responding is going to look different depending on what the issue is. But for example, if somebody comes after me and says, you know what, your writing on this piece just sucks. It sucks. My inner core is going to want to get defensive, but I know better. I'm going to listen. I'm going to say, well, what do you mean by suck? Tell me the parts that sucked. All of it. Okay, tell me more about that. I don't want to tell you more about it. It just sucked. Okay, is there an example or a piece? No. Okay, give me some time to process this. I'm going to go off and process this. And what I'm going to learn in the process is that feedback may be true, but it's not helpful. So I'm going to respond. I'm going to construct a response that says, hey, listen, I want to thank you for having the courage to be direct with me. And I also need you to know that in order for feedback to be useful and to get me better, I need it to be specific. Would you be willing to give it some thought and come back with specific lines that you didn't like, or lines that you felt weren't impactful, or anything that is specific so that I can get better, right? Listen, process, respond. And depending on how they respond, you will know whether you are dealing with someone with integrity and maturity or not. Because if you come back with a really thoughtful, good response that acknowledges what the other person has said and also acknowledges what you need out of the dynamic, and they come back and they're like, you still suck and this sucks and you should be kicked off the planet, you're not actually playing ball with an adult. You're playing ball with someone who is a corporate gaslighter, potentially an office bully, or just a big grown child. In which case, that's a different video you need to watch, and my channel is full of them. So hopefully this was helpful. Listen, process, respond. And my people, if you work on this specific issue inside of yourself, it will transform your career, truly. I hope this was helpful. Shine on, my friends. We need your light. I'll see you next time.